Hello everyone. Today we're diving into one of the most shocking scandals in American sports history. In 2020, Netflix released a documentary called Athlete A, exposing a horrifying sexual abuse scandal within the USA Gymnastics team. This case had a massive impact across the US, shining a light on a dark chapter in the history of American gymnastics. Take a look at the movie poster. It says, hundreds of athletes were abused, including many who won Olympic gold medals. But it wasn't until 2016 that a single article blew the lid off this global scandal. This is the biggest scandal in US sports history, and maybe even the world. So what happened in 2016? Let's rewind the clock and go back to that year to break down the truth behind this shocking scandal. In the world of sports, the US women's gymnastics team was once a powerhouse. Whether it was the World Championships or the Olympics, they racked up countless medals and produced some of the most famous athletes in the world. This made the USA Gymnastics team a household name for a while. Tons of parents across America wanted to send their daughters to the national team or local gymnastics clubs for professional training. With all that success came a flood of commercial sponsorships and advertising deals. The athletes naturally became money-making machines, helping USA Gymnastics rake in millions. But then, right before the opening ceremony of the 2016 Rio Olympics, on August 4th to be exact, when everyone was focused on the games, the Indianapolis Star dropped an article that exposed the biggest scandal in US sports history, and maybe even the world. The headline, "Turning a Blind Eye." The article revealed the existence of widespread abuse by coaches and staff within the USA Gymnastics team. But whenever victims tried to sue, their cases were buried. If this article had come out at a quieter time, it might not have caused such a huge stir. But during the Olympic opening ceremony, when the whole world was watching, this news hit like a bombshell, grabbing everyone's attention. The Indianapolis Star seized the moment. They quickly followed up with another article. This one revealed that sexual abuse was a regular occurrence within the women's gymnastics team. According to their investigation, over the past 20 years, at least 368 gymnasts had become victims. That's 368 people. Think about how many young athletes that number represents. What's more, the women's gymnastics team is different from other teams. The athletes are often much younger, with many starting training at just 4 or 5 years old and competing as teens. Can you imagine the level of trauma that sexual abuse caused these girls? And the perpetrators were the very people who were supposed to protect them, their coaches and team doctors. But the information from the Indianapolis Star was just an estimate. It didn't name specific culprits. Plus, since these incidents happened over a decade ago, investigating them was incredibly tough. As the story spread, some people started to think it might be a made-up rumor to grab attention, especially since no victims had come forward publicly yet. But at that critical moment, a woman named Rachel Den Hollander stepped up. After reading the article, she immediately emailed the Indianapolis Star, saying she was a former gymnast and that the person who molested her was none other than Larry Nassar, the team doctor for USA Gymnastics. Starting at age 15, Nassar had molested her multiple times under the guise of medical treatment. Rachel then agreed to be interviewed by the press, becoming the first former gymnast to publicly identify herself while accusing Larry Nassar. She shared that during her time on the team, Nassar had sexually abused her for a long time. Even when her mom was standing right next to her, he'd find a hidden spot to keep going. Back then, she was too young to understand that it was wrong. Nassar always told her he was a professional, that everything was just medical treatment, and that she should trust him. It wasn't until years later that Rachel realized it was a crime. She had reported him earlier, but high-ranking team officials covered it up and forced her to stay quiet. She didn't give up, though. After retiring, she became a lawyer and quietly gathered evidence for years. Finally, the Indianapolis Star article gave her the chance she'd been waiting for. She publicly identified herself, accused Nassar, and encouraged other victims like her to speak out. Not long after, 2 more gymnasts reached out to the Indianapolis Star, one of them an Olympic champion. Their stories matched Rachel's exactly. They were all molested by the team doctor, Larry Nassar. One of the women said Nassar abused her from ages 12 to 13 until she was 18. Back then, she didn't understand what was happening, and because of the natural trust she had in the team doctor, she had no idea it was a crime. It wasn't until years later that she realized the truth. At this point, the Indianapolis Star figured out that this seemingly respectable Larry Nassar was the person they were looking for. So, they shifted their focus to investigate this doctor, instead of the team's coaches. As they dug deeper, Nassar's monstrous actions came to light. Over his 20-year career, he had abused countless gymnasts. What's shocking is that all those years he remained untouchable, and to the public he was still a respected doctor. There's not much record of Larry Nassar's childhood. We only know he was a good student with a sharp mind. At 15, he became a trainer for the girls' gymnastics team at North Farmington High School. He got that role through connections. His brother was a sports coach at the school. So you get the picture. Back then, he was just doing odd jobs for the team in 1981, after graduating from North Farmington High School, Larry chose to study kinesiology at the University of Michigan. While studying, he also helped the school's football and track teams, gaining a good amount of experience. In 1985, Larry graduated with a bachelor's degree. Just 1 year later, in 1986, he was hired by the US National Gymnastics team as an athletic trainer. At this point, he wasn't well known or prominent, but he kept pursuing his education, focusing on osteopathic medicine. He completed a master's program, then graduated from the Michigan State University College of Osteopathic Medicine in 1993, earning a doctorate in osteopathic medicine. You could say he was really impressive and professional. After that, Larry published several research papers on treating gymnastics injuries. He even patented a device to support ankle injuries. Starting in 1986, as the team doctor for the national gymnastics team, Larry worked at the Atlanta 1996 Olympics, Sydney 2000 Olympics, Beijing 2008 Olympics, and London 2012 Olympics. Beyond his role with the gymnastics team, Larry also worked as a doctor at Michigan State University, served as an assistant professor in the Department of Family and Community Medicine, and was a doctor for the Twistars Gymnastics Club in Michigan. USA Gymnastics Association awarded him multiple honors. He was even inducted into Michigan State University's Hall of Fame. To everyone, Larry was a famous figure in the world of US and global gymnastics, someone highly respected and seen. Here's a role model for success. The former president of USA Gymnastics, Steve Penny, once praised Larry, saying he played a key role in the success of the US Gymnastics Federation, both on and off the mat. His contributions over the years were invaluable and would continue to be. In 2012, the head coach of the US Women's Olympic team, John Geddert, also praised him, saying he was a highly professional doctor, extremely dedicated. He went above and beyond to care for the athletes. He was probably one of the most respected gymnastics experts I've ever met. There were plenty of similar praises like that. Even many gymnasts said he was thoughtful, cared deeply about their lives, had professional massage techniques, and was a good friend they could share anything with. But in reality, since 1994, Larry had been abusing the gymnasts he treated. The number of female victims reached hundreds. What's bizarre is that this abuse went on for over 20 years without being noticed by the public. At Michigan State University, community clinics, the USA Gymnastics Association, the Sports Medicine Association, and the Olympic team. So how did he pull it off? Was it really true that no one knew about this? The famous Locard's exchange principle says that whenever there's contact, there's a trace left behind. The evil things Larry did couldn't possibly go unnoticed or uninvolved. Through investigations, it turned out some victims had reported Larry before. But whether it was the school, the association, or the national gymnastics team, they all turned a blind eye to these accusations. They even actively covered it up and didn't report it to US police. Even when some victims spoke out publicly through other channels, they were up against a Larry labeled as professional, trustworthy, a good man, and so on. No one believed them. Some media outlets even bluntly claimed these gymnasts were making up stories for attention. So for years, Larry kept committing crimes while living a free and easy life. It wasn't until the Indianapolis Star published their article that Larry's crimes were exposed to the public. More and more former gymnasts came forward to accuse Larry of his crimes and take him to court. They all said he abused his position to assault them multiple times. Seeing the number of lawsuits against Larry skyrocket, Michigan State University fired him and quickly cut all ties with him. By November 22, 2016, he was facing 50 complaints and charges. If these crimes were proven, he'd be looking at life in prison. But he denied all the charges, claiming he was innocent, and paid $1 million in bail to be released. On December 16, 2016, US police officially arrested Larry again. This time they made a shocking discovery. The FBI found 37,000 child pornography images and a video of him assaulting a minor on his computer. Given the severity of his actions, he was denied bail this time. As news of Larry's arrest spread, many former gymnasts refused to stay silent anymore and took him to court. Soon after, 88 women publicly testified in court about their painful experiences. Their testimonies encouraged even more victims to come forward. In the end, 156 people testified at the trial, which lasted 7 days. Judge Rosemary Aquilina was furious at Larry's brutal actions and encouraged the victims to share their stories. Kai Stevens publicly shared her painful experiences. What's notable is that Kai wasn't a gymnast or even a patient of Larry's. Her parents were just friends with him, so the families were pretty close. Kai said the first time Larry assaulted her was when she was just 6 years old. At the time, Larry acted inappropriately in front of her, and it later escalated to physical contact. Back then, she didn't know it was wrong. At 12, Kai told her parents that Larry had done some strange things to her, like rubbing certain body parts against her legs and thighs. The sad part? Her parents didn't believe her, thinking she was lying, and even made her apologize to Larry. It wasn't until years later, when Larry was arrested, that the truth came out. Kai's dad, after learning the truth about his daughter's assault, was so heartbroken that he took his own life. At the trial, Kai told Larry, "Little girls don't stay little forever. They grow up, become strong, and in the end they'll destroy your world." Former US gymnast Hayden Wake said she was molested by Larry starting at age 12, even right in front of her mom. Hayden spoke emotionally at the trial. Olympic champion Michaela Maroney said she was assaulted by Larry starting at age 13. Larry always found excuses to perform unnecessary treatments on her. The abuse continued until she retired. Michaela said, "Our silence allowed evil to keep going. It's time for him to face justice." She also encouraged more victims to stand up and accuse Larry together. Olympic champion Raisman spoke out too. She told Larry, "The girls you destroyed have united into a powerful force, and you'll lose everything. The times have changed. We have nowhere to hide anymore. We're bravely standing up and speaking our truth. We're standing firm right here, not going anywhere. Larry, get ready to face the judgment of the world." Olympic champions Gabby Douglas, Jordan Weber, and famous American athlete Simone Biles, who has won 32 Olympic and World Championship medals, all revealed they were mistreated by Larry. Beyond the women who were victims, there was a mother named Donna Markser, who spoke on behalf of her daughter at the trial. Her daughter had fallen into depression after being assaulted by Larry, and ultimately passed away after doing something reckless. At the trial, there was even a moment like this. A father with sharp words, because all three of his daughters were victims, wanted a moment alone with Larry. There were so many accusations against Larry. Many women said that even when they realized they'd been harmed, Larry's position was too powerful for them to fight back. Those who had complained to the USA Gymnastics Association were forced to sign confidentiality agreements, and the issue was buried. If they didn't comply, they could face retaliation. Coaches and team doctors would team up to target troublemakers, like gradually reducing their appearances, denying them chances to compete in big events, sidelining them, and so on. Judge Rosemary listened carefully to every word from the girls. Their speeches were incredibly moving. Behind each story was a victim of abuse. Many girls had been assaulted by Larry for a long time. Some were assaulted hundreds of times. But despite facing so many direct accusations, Larry still refused to plead guilty. He insisted, "I'm a good doctor. My treatments worked." The patients speaking out now are the same ones who praised me and kept coming back to me time after time. Larry even prepared a long letter begging for mercy, saying the so-called victims were making up stories for money and fame, hoping Judge Rosemary would see the truth. But Judge Rosemary didn't even look at the letter. She threw it on the table. That action got a unanimous cheer from everyone in the room. Before sentencing, she told all the girls, "You're no longer victims, you're survivors. Leave. Your pain here, go out there and chase the glory of your future." At the trial, Rachel, the first victim to publicly identify herself, gave a closing statement. "Our justice system has two big goals: to pursue justice and protect the innocent. If we can't give Larry the highest possible sentence, neither of those goals can be achieved." Judge Rosemary's sentence for Larry was like a sharp sword. "Your crimes were deliberate, cunning, utterly cruel, and unforgivable. Sentencing you is my honor. I sentence you to 175 years in prison. You'll never live to see the day you get out." After the sentence was read, everyone in the courtroom stood up and applauded her decision. In reality, there were many more. Charges against Larry and his trials took place in multiple courts. In the end, Larry was convicted of possessing child pornography and sentenced to 60 years in federal prison. 2 Michigan courts sentenced him to up to 175 years and 125 years for various assault charges. Larry appealed multiple times, but all were denied. Although he got the punishment he deserved, this biggest scandal in sports history isn't over yet. As we mentioned earlier, over his nearly 35 years of crime, people had come forward to report Larry's actions, but they were always silenced. To put it nicely, the senior officials of the national gymnastics team, schools, clubs, and so on, were negligent, not wanting the issue to blow up. To be blunt, they colluded and covered it up. As a result, Michigan State University, the U.S. Olympic Committee, USA Gymnastics, and the Twistars Gymnastics Club all faced numerous accusations. After that, USA Gymnastics and 18 senior members, including former President Steve Penny, resigned. The president of Michigan State University at the time, Lou Anna Simon, and the athletic director also resigned and left the school. But resigning doesn't mean past mistakes can be erased. Those who reported earlier were silenced, threatened, told they were being treated, and sometimes even sent back to endure more abuse. The school silenced victims instead of contacting law enforcement. This allowed Larry to roam free. When faced with full investigations, Michigan State University chose to settle by paying compensation. In the end, they paid $500 million to 332 victims. Michigan's Attorney General announced they'd stop investigating the university. However, former President Simon, who prosecutors say lied to police, will continue to be investigated. If true, she won't escape legal punishment. For former USA Gymnastics President Steve Penny, His relationship with Larry wasn't normal. He repeatedly buried accusations against Larry. After the scandal broke, he was suspected of destroying and falsifying evidence related to Larry, so the police arrested him. If the charge of evidence tampering is proven, he'll face 2 to 10 years in prison. His trial hasn't started yet. The day after Penny's arrest, USA Gymnastics permanently banned him. As for John Guedet, a coach for the US Gymnastics team, he worked closely with Larry and founded the Twistars Gymnastics Club in Michigan in 1996. The club had a private room, and it was in that room that Larry assaulted many gymnasts. After the scandal broke, Guedet was suspended. Through investigations, he faced numerous charges, 24 felonies in total. Facing so many accusations, Guedet chose to do something reckless and passed away. The club he founded was also shut down. The USA Gymnastics Training Center at Carolee Ranch, where many athletes trained, was in a remote location with a closed-off training space where even family members weren't allowed. It was founded by Martha Karolyi and her husband, both athletes from Romania, who later came to the US and set up the training center. There, Larry assaulted young athletes for 15 years. After the scandal broke, the training center was permanently closed, and Martha and her husband, the owners, will face some charges. In July 2018, over 140 victims took the stage. They were awarded the Arthur Ashe Courage Award. This award is given to those who fight through adversity, stand up to danger, and are willing to defend their beliefs at all costs. The survivors who stood in court dared to speak out about what they went through, faced the monster Larry and put him behind bars. This is absolutely the greatest display of courage. So, they totally deserved this award. In reality, the number of victims in this biggest sports scandal in the world is staggering. As the case kept being investigated, the number of people brave enough to accuse Larry was beyond imagination. So far, there have been over 500 women. In 2021, over 500 victims reached a settlement with USA Gymnastics and the US Olympic Committee, receiving $380 million in compensation. Combined with the earlier $500 million from Michigan State University, the total compensation reached a staggering $880 million, about $2.3 billion at today's exchange rate. Plus, the US Olympic Committee and USA Gymnastics issued statements expressing deep respect for the incredible strength and courage these women showed, while apologizing for failing to protect them and for the severe trauma they endured. Even though they received compensation, the survivors said no amount of money can make up for the trauma they went through. They hope the government will soon make reforms to prevent tragedies like this from happening again. In response, the US Olympic Committee and USA Gymnastics committed to a full overhaul of their structures to fight against abuse, support athletes and victims, strengthen athlete protection, and prevent any form of abuse from happening again. In 2019, this scandal that shook US and global sports was turned into a documentary called At the Heart of Gold, Inside the USA Gymnastics Scandal. Looking back at this shocking scandal, the reason Larry could keep committing crimes without being caught, besides the senior officials covering for each other, was the loopholes in the system back then. Gymnastics used to be like any other sport. For example, in the 1950s and 60s, the athletes competing were adult women. But everything changed in 1976 because of a girl named Nadia Comaneci. In 1976, Nadia, at just 14 years old, made history by becoming the first gymnast to score a perfect 10 at the Olympics. At that Olympics, she scored 6 perfect 10s and ended up winning 3 gold medals. That was something no one had ever dared to dream of before. From then on, people realized that the younger a gymnast is, the better. So you'll see a lot of kids on gymnastics teams. Some even start training at 4 or 5 years old. From a young age, these kids are taught to strive for gold medals, facing huge pressure from the country. But at the end of the day, kids' ability to recognize danger isn't fully developed. Under the intense pressure of training, Larry, as the team doctor, exploited this gap. Compared to the strict coaches, Larry acted very gentle, often bringing candy for the kids, winning their trust. Then he'd pretend to treat them while abusing and assaulting them. In fact, as early as 1996, people had reported Larry. But USA Gymnastics chose to ignore it because the association made too much money and couldn't afford any damage to its image. The entire gymnastics team was like a commercial empire. For the sake of their future, the people in USA Gymnastics chose silence. There's another detail few people notice. Most of the female victims were assaulted for the first time. That experience completely changed their psychology, their views on sexuality, their values and their sense of safety around men, causing deep emotional trauma. For them, publicly identifying themselves, standing in court to accuse Larry and calmly facing their past pain, that's what truly makes them survivors. That's it for today's video. See you in the next one. Goodbye.